Welcome back, everyone, to round 9 of Superkick. We've got a very interesting ladder, actually. Probably 4 or 5 sides, actually, on the 5 and 3 record. Sheep making a charge up the top of the ladder, and Funky Balls impressing and being probably the most formed side at 6 and 2. Let's look at the Stars and Pirates. The Stars are 5 and 3. But also lost last week in their BH Cup matchup, so four losses on the trot. Taking on the Pirates, who are 4 and 5. Pirates having a bit of an upset win last week against the Quiche. They've got Langford and Finlayson, who should return now this week after having a match in the VFL. Or should I say Sandful? But Walters and Owies also look very impressive for the Pirates. And for the Stars, they're going to need more from players like Marshall, Danaher and Elliott, all being pretty mediocre of late, because Callum Brown is out for 3 weeks with his suspension, and Mychek, as we've learnt now overnight, that he has had a hamstring injury that he was carrying in the game last week and will miss the next 2 to 3 weeks. So for me, it's going to be an upset. I'm going to say Pirates are going to go to 5 and 5 and even their season ledger and get up by 19 points. Our attention now turns to the 6 and 2 Funky Balls up the top of the ladder, taking on the Mango side, who had a very close win last week. They are 4 and 4 and knocked off the Golf Fest. For the Funky Balls, they have got some really good players in form. The big kahuna, Tracy, looks a star pick, kicked 3 last quarter goals last week. One of those players who can just turn it on very quickly and kick some big goals, as he did last week, and has done that a few times now this season. Hogan, again, consistent with his couple of goals last week in the Giants' loss. Gunston bounced back last week, returning to some form himself, although it was 2 goals for, a bit inaccurate, but Prestia will return this week as the side loses Gardner with his season-ending injury, and Degoe also will miss again. For the Mangoes, they've got another hero in Haywood. Geez, what a performance last week. 4 goals. That's a career best from him. But Larky kicked 2 last week, and the side will be hoping that he can maybe kick more than that this week. Amiss also kicked a couple of goals in his return, and maybe 2 players in forward and Scott. Will they get a game this week? We don't know. The coach is hoping that they will return very soon. But this Ball side, they're on top. They look the more balanced side. I think they'll get the chocolates here by 30 points. Our last game for the round is the 4 and 4 is Donny's Good, who have now won 4 on the trot and just outside the top 6, taking on the 3 and 5 Vital, who are very desperate for a win this week. We look at Vital, they've added on Zach Merritt. They're looking for some leadership, some inspiration to get them back up the ladder. Will Hoskin-Elliott, he's one to have a look at. He's been one that's been playing a little bit more down forward the last couple of weeks, so he may be presented with some opportunities as Mychek is missing. Jamara Ugle-Hagan, he's returned as well and looks pretty good last week, although was a bit in and out of the game. And really, for Vital to have a chance in this one, they're really going to need quite a decent outing from Charlie Curnow. 4 is Donna's Good. Ben King has been in very good form, as has Rankin, and really Ben King's performance last week with his 3 goals, with the limited opportunities, got him over the line against a desperate Dr. Vengeance side. Mason Wood has just returned from injury, and he looked pretty, pretty good, actually. And Papley and Amadi are 2 as well to, watch, because they'll have opportunities this week. But Mitch Georgiadis is one to have a look at. He did come off injured last week. We're not sure if he'll get up. But in saying that, I think he's done as good as just the better side, and will continue their winning streak by 12 points. Our third matchup is the 5 and 3 Sheep taking on the Doctor's Vengeance, who are 1 and 7 and had a very close loss again last week to Is Done As Good. The coach has been feeling a little bit under pressure as of late, and this ladder for them at 1 and 7 could be a lot better. They could have been 3 or 4 wins by now, so a bit unlucky for them. But they take on the Sheep, who are been in rampant form. In saying that, Corkins has been goalless the last 4 weeks, so, he's due for a half-decent game this week. West will also return from his suspension, and Lafau has been a very, very good pick. It's looked very lively, actually, and Michael Frederick, he's the exciting player up in Freo. He's been, one to have a look at. He's just returned from his injury, but the Sheep do lose Waterman with his concussion for the week, and Rosie eventually now will miss the next few weeks with his hamstring injury. For the Doctors, Libba and Danger obviously have been injured in the past week or so. They'll both miss for some time, but Ollie Henry looks a very good pick so far, has kicked goals most weeks, and the Vengeance will really hope for the Dacos brothers to get off the leash and kick some multiples. And maybe a better game for Myers, as Tom Powell has been topped up for the Vengeance. But the Sheep will be too strong this week, 29 points. We now turn our attention to the 5 and 3 Quiche, who had a shock loss last week to the Pirates, taking on the 3 and 5 Scorpions, who also had another loss. I think they've had a few on the trot now. For the Quiche, McGuinness returns. We'll suspect he'll return, having the last couple of games in the VFL due to the injury of Mychek, and he looked very impressive last week, kicking a couple of goals. Sam Darcy is one to keep your eyes on. He looks in really good form. I think he may have only kicked the 1 goal last week, but he is covering the ground and playing very well. We look at Noah Bolter. He will also probably return this week from his hamstring injury. And Jezza Cameron had a quiet one last week, didn't have his kicking boots on. But I think he will bounce back. Players like him don't have 2 quiet ones in a row. And Connor McDonald is the new recruit for the Quiche, and it'll be interesting to see what he does down in Tassie. For the Scorpions, they've got Max King, who's been a bit down on form lately. Flying Ryan's come back recently from injury and hasn't done too much either. Pickett and Ginnivan, they're probably 2 small forwards. He's hoping to get back into some form themselves. And Windsor has probably been one of the better players lately, who has impressed over the last couple of rounds. But the Quiche, they're a very good side this year. They will rebound and have a comfortable win by 26 points with a couple of their inclusions. We now have a look at the BH Cup. We have the White Line Fever taking on the Goldfest. Both these sides are in some different form. The Fever, up the top of the ladder in the SMS comp, look probably the best side there, whilst the Goldfest are struggling, although do have a 5 and 4 record. For the Fever, they've got, Charlie Curnow in some pretty good form, kicking multiples every single game. Amos again and Jamara Ugelhagen are 2 as well very important players, and Turner's one to have a look at as he's been added on recently. For the Goldfest, as well for the Fever, it should be noted that McCarthy, and they've lost him for the season, and Brown's been suspended for 3 weeks. But for the Goldfest, they will regain Chol, but really need more from Toby Green to have any chance in this one, because there's just too much reliance on Logan McDonald. So really for me, it'd just be, I think, a pretty comfortable Fever win. I would have said probably 10 goals if they had McCarthy and Brown, but we're going to go for about 32 points this week. Let's have a look now at who's best with the Fest at the completion of round 8. At number 5, we have a new player in the top 5, and that's Big Josh Tracy. Again, another player that the Bulls has found. And I also think it's the Rubber Gloves that has got Tracy as well. So he was important in their victory last week. He's at number 5. At number 4, we have Ben King, who has gone up a spot, kicked another 3 goals last week, and essentially got his Donna's Good a very important win against a Doctor's Vengeance side. At number 3, we will stick with Jesse Hogan, who has been very consistent, kicked another couple of goals last week. Number 2, we'll also stick with Charlie Curnow. Again, kicked a couple of goals. It wasn't as prolific as he's been in other weeks, but, he's a very good selection at number 2 and has the opportunity to go at number 1, because Jake Waterman, who is at number 1 and had another nice game last week with 2, will miss this week with his concussion. And really, he should have kicked another goal, but Jamie Cripps was very costly in a reversal. It was Nick Martin that he gave that free kick against, and it was at a really important time of the game, and it really could have gotten West Coast within a kick, and basically Essendon went down the end and kicked the goal. And Waterman was very frustrated there, but he's really been, so far, I think, Player of the Year. Has been a massive surprise packet, and it is the Fortress and the Boogie Woogie Sheep side that has Waterman, so apologies to him last week. But that is my top 5 with who's the best with Fest.